Good evening and welcome to the Paranormal Pals podcast for another week. Hey,
Hello.
Barbara,
Hi, folks.
how are you this week?
Me?
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
you,
great.
you.
I'm very good, thank you. How are you, Tracy?
I'm glad it's Friday.
Yeah, yeah, you can
End of
say that.
another week. It's true what they say, the older you get, the faster time goes.
Hmm. I wouldn't know.
Just to say, Tash isn't with us this week. She's lost her voice. So, unfortunately, she won't be joining us, but I'm sure she'll be back next week. And while we're on about it, we'll have to check what we're doing next week, actually, seeing we had to shuffle a few bits and bobs around. So I hope everyone's had a great week. And this week we are looking at what is sometimes called, or more often than not, called the most haunted village in England. Although I believe there is a vie to that title. I believe there's supposedly roughly about 14 ghosts in Pluckley, so they say. But there is another village that has 17, a reported 17. So Pluckley was mentioned in the Guinness Book of Records, not holding a title. Lots of people think that it meant it was holding the title of the most haunted village in England, but it was just given a mention in the Guinness Book of Records way back. I think it was late 70s, early 80s, something like that.
Yeah.
So we've got an awful lot to discuss, but we've only got one person on at the moment. So there doesn't seem to be much point in cracking into it just yet. So we have got some cracking things coming up, haven't we, Barb?
We have. It's really interesting. Lots of interesting stuff happening at the moment.
Yeah. So keep in mind those Friday nights, 8 p.m., whether it's a live or just a video. Tickle that notifications button so that you get, oh, hey, Kelly, welcome. So that you get notified of when we drop a new episode, because every Friday, 8 p.m., rain or shine, we'll be doing it. The only week we won't be doing it is before Christmas, and we'll have a discussion between us three ladies of when we're going to break and when we're going to end up coming back in the new year. Probably we'll give a break January and we'll come back beginning of February when everyone starts going back to school and back to work. Would probably be the thing to do. So, Barbs, do
Is
we
it
want to
news
start?
time?
Do we want to start the news? There's only one of us on. There's only Kelly's the only one with us that I can see
Oh,
at the moment.
okay. No, shall we just we can just chat for a while, perhaps.
Yeah,
Okay.
about what?
Well,
Well, we've
who are
got.
we, Tracy? Who are we going to talk about?
Oh gosh, let me think. Um,
Um,
we've got a
we
very special thing happening, haven't we, Barb? Coming up end of July time.
Yes, that's what I was just going to say,
Go on
actually,
then,
and
there you go. Don't say where.
super super exciting because Paranormal Pals, in conjunction with the Quantum Foundation and paranormal researchers and another team.
And Central Hawke's Bay Paranormal.
Yes. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Stephen, Corey, sorry, forgot your name for a minute. We're doing an investigation together and it's going to be so cool. We are super looking forward to it. It is an absolutely amazing venue and it's going to be great to do a collaboration between the teams. Really looking forward to
Awesome.
working with new well, not new, but new to me investigators, and I'm sure we're all going to teach each other a few tricks and work really well together.
And we are getting the opportunity to extend one of our K9 team's
Oh, I got
legs
that.
investigating. We're bringing in the dog, or one of the dogs, to see what he can, or should I say she, can sniff out during the investigation. So the owners have been incredibly accommodating and allowing us to do so. So yeah, absolutely stoked.
Yes, I'm really excited for that too. I must admit, although I've done investigations with possible ghost dogs, I haven't actually used an actual live animal during an investigation. So yeah, that's going to be really interesting. I'm super looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it as well. And it's very, very, very kind of the owners to allow us in. Good evening, Mr. Stephen. How are you? I hope you are well down there and keeping dry. I don't know about Kelly and Stephen, or you, Barb, but we've been getting hammered with rain up here.
I think we'll find that Kelly's in the same region as Stephen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Buttercup French toast rolls.
Sorry. Sorry, I'm just...
Okay, what ghost is that? Is that at your house or mine?
No, that was mine. Sorry, folks. I'm just trying to get hold of someone who couldn't get onto the podcast, and so I was just trying to send them a link to it. But you now have my undivided attention. I've given up.
Oh, well,
sorry, Jess, you can watch this tomorrow.
I'm sure she'll get to see it anyway. Oh,
Yeah.
Stephen and Kelly both say it's cold down there.
It's cold here too.
Yeah, it's not very warm. I've got the heat pump cranking in the background. Stephen, we just did announce that we were doing a investigation with you end of July. Don't know about you, but we're really excited about it. And we were just saying that we're bringing in one of our K9 team on this investigation, so it's going to be really cool. And Barbara forgot your name of your team. Bad Barbara. Bad Barbara.
Well, no, it's just because it's got it's not what you expect. It's a different name than what you would expect a Hawke's Bay team to be.
I just love it. It's so funny because I talk about them and I go PR, QF, CHB.
I know.
And that's all I really remember them as. I think to Ian the other day, I called you guys paranormal investigators or instead of paranormal researchers, I said PI instead of PR. I beg your pardon.
Oh, right.
Oh, that's cool. We can't wait to get out there either, Stephen. It's been a while. I tend to delve more into the research side of things nowadays at the moment, as opposed to actively getting out there and investigating. So I'm looking forward once again to getting my boots back on the ground. The last time I investigated was with Barb and Ian from Paranormal Researchers when we did a place over in Thames.
A hotel here in Thames.
An old hotel.
A derelict hotel here in Thames. That was a goodie. It's still there though.
Yeah, there you go. How much longer for? My goodness.
They've started dismantling it, yeah.
All right, so we did have 4 people in, and now we're back down to 3 again, so I don't know what's going on there. But I see that quite often. It goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down. I don't know why. All right, well, shall we hit it?
Oh, let's do the
Paranormal news time. Go for it. I'm not doing the music.
Oh, thank you for telling me.
Sorry.
Sorry, folks. I was waiting for the music. I've been away for a few weeks, so I was waiting for the music. However, we will forget the music and I will just do the news, all right? And what news it is. Okay, well, for those of you who don't know, Aaron Goodwin of Ghost Adventures fame, although I don't really need to say that, do I? But in case anyone didn't know, well, he's back in the news this week. If you recall, we recently reported that his wife, Victoria, had been arrested for allegedly trying to hire a hitman to kill him. She was charged with solicitation to commit murder and conspiracy to commit murder. And while she initially denied the charges, she eventually filed a guilty plea in exchange for the dropping of the solicitation to commit murder charge. Today, the judge sentenced Victoria to 3 to 7.5 years in a Nevada prison. Poor Aaron, it was heartbreaking to see, broke down and sobbed in court as he read his impact victim statement, and saying that whether she does minimum or maximum time, I will not feel safe once she's released, and describing how betrayed he felt when he discovered that the love of his life not only had cheated on him, but had also tried to have him killed. Of course, Goodwin's followers online were absolutely outraged at the sentence, stating that she should have had a much longer sentence.
Oh, I agree.
So you heard it here first, folks.
If you didn't catch it, there is a video on Entertainment Tonight's Facebook page of Aaron reading his impact victim statement. It's actually heartbreaking. It really is heartbreaking. My heart really went out to the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, just devastating, man. He says it. He just doesn't feel safe. He's got armed security with him now.
Yeah.
He's not going to ever move past it, he reckons. And I don't blame him. You know, I mean, if you trusted someone, the one person that you thought that would have your back out of the whole world would be your partner, and they go and do something as vile as that. So poor guy. Yeah. No matter what you think of Ghost Adventures or the company he keeps with old Baggins, you've got to have some form of empathy. He's a human being, and that's just tragic. It's just freaking unbelievable. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, okay, Ghost Adventures is not what it was once, but I mean, he's been there all along. He's seems like a nice guy. No one deserves.
And apparently he is, by all accounts. He's a very, very nice guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, I do have a little bit of news, but I can't tell you much about it. But because I couldn't read the whole article because I had to pay money. And yes, Stephen, old Baggins isn't a bit of bother and all. You're right, mate. Allegedly. We're just going to chuck that in there, allegedly. I couldn't read the whole article and I had to pay to read it. And yeah, I don't do that stuff. So, Chateau, Tongariro. Apparently, the person that was interested in buying it has actually been blocked access of going into it. And he's now found out that there's a document floating around talking about getting costs on seeing how much it's going to be to demo.
Oh, I mean, that is just ridiculous. It's such a beautiful building.
I know.
It's a piece of New Zealand's heritage. Why would they demolish it? It's just amazing.
I don't even want to think about it, to be quite honest. But it actually brought up something that I remembered. I remembered sending the Department of Conservation an email requesting all the documentation surrounding the discussions about what's going to happen with that building underneath the Official Secrets Act. But I never heard anything back, and that's actually illegal. So I must follow through with that.
Yeah, do that.
Because they are a government department, they have to comply with that request, and they have not complied with that request. So they could be in absolute real big duties about that.
Yeah.
Welcome, Jessica. Jess has just made it, Barbara.
Oh,
yay.
I was trying to send you a message, Jess. I'm glad you found it.
Okay, so that is our paranormal news for this evening. Some weeks we struggle to find something to talk about, so we just don't do it. But when we've got something, we'll be putting it up. So tonight we got our haunted location spotlight out there, and it is my turn to talk, apparently. So I dragged up, and there could have been New Zealand places that I could have done, but I dragged up this place because it's quite close to my heart, and I've had quite a lot to do with it going back years ago. And so we're going to talk about the ghosts and the folklore of Pluckley Village in Kent in England, in the beautiful Kentish countryside. So it's a little rural village.
Now that is Pluckley, folks, okay? Don't say it wrong.
Pluckley. So I lived in the next village up from Pluckley, and that was called Edgerton, and I worked in the local village tavern there. So needless to say, having a night off, kind of going and drinking in the pub that I worked in, I kind of felt like I was back at work, and I would quite often end up working. So I would travel about 1.5 miles up the road to drink in Pluckley's The Black Horse Inn on my nights off, which again was allegedly haunted. I also spent a few years in the police force when I was in Britain, and I policed the Darling Buds of May picnic from the TV program that used to adorn our screens. So they filmed in Pluckley Village. So I used to watch them filming when I caught the bus to work every morning in nearby Ashford, which was the nearest town. And they used to hold a Darling Buds of May picnic. So I policed there 2 years, I think, in a row, which was a lot of fun. And I also policed the village during Halloween, which is just a nightmare. So while Pluckley is a rural village and the Pluckley area does extend beyond the village itself, it only houses about 1,000 people today. But the actual little village in the village area only has about a few hundred people at the most at the heart of it. So it's quite, and sort of here is the village centre, if you like, because there you've got the church and then you've got the Black Horse Inn. But those few hundred people, unfortunately, come Halloween, welcome to Halloween at Pluckley. Those few hundred people will swell to thousands on the night of Halloween. There would be coach loads of people turning up in the village, and the coaches would just be one after the other after the other. It was absolute pandemonium, and they were coming from miles away. They were coming from London, they were coming from Manchester, all sorts of places. So ultimately, chaos completely ensued, because what you've got is thousands of drunken revelers roaming around the village centre, hunting for ghosts into the wee hours of the morning, much to the disdain of the locals, or should I say the poor sleep-deprived locals. I only went once on Halloween. I never, ever went again. All I remember is the egg throwing, the drunks stumbling around. You couldn't even get into the pub. It was so packed. There was people spilled out down the front of the stairs in the little car parking area at the front. They were out the side area in the little garden bar, which links into the church. And we were stationed at the churchyard entrance so that they wouldn't go from the side exit of the pub through the garden and through the gate into the churchyard with all their glass. It was just, God, all you heard all night was smashing glass. So I visited the next morning after, and we were just met with what I can only describe as utter carnage. There was rubbish, there was clothes, there was shoes, there was broken glass everywhere. So it's not a wonder that the local villagers have had an absolute gutsful of hordes of tourists descending upon them at Halloween. My mate's brand new leather jacket was the first time she'd ever worn it, was absolutely ruined by the egg throwing. Someone threw an egg at her. It hit her on the back. We wiped off what we could, but the acid from the egg ate through the leather. So it actually ate into a jacket, ruining it. So don't even go there on Halloween, okay? If you're going to go there any other time but Halloween. And I've heard it's actually not a lot better today, unfortunately. And this is what was left in just one of the little areas where they decided to camp overnight in the forest. So this is a beautiful little lane, if you like, in Pluckley. So while we're talking about this, I've spent a lot of time in Pluckley, both during the day and at night. And I've been trailing around and looking for the ghosts and visiting the sites in which they were said to frequent, as well as speaking to those people who resided there. And I purchased this little Pluckley Haunted Village book. And some of the information in this podcast is going to be garnered from that book. It was actually written by Dennis Chambers, who was an ex-police officer. And the book's called Haunted Pluckley, Most Haunted Village in Kent. I actually bought it from the Black Horse Inn, the pub. It was published back in 1984, but Dennis used to run tours right throughout Kent, visiting all the haunted hotspots and the locations and providing a running commentary on them. And so while some of the tales are an interesting read, some of them have been confused with other stories, such as happens with legends. And Simon Morton, who was a professor, associate professor of creative economies, don't ask me what that means, at the University of the West of England in Bristol, has done an amazing amount of extensive research into Pluckley and the origins of the ghost stories and all its haunted tales. So his findings are going to be used in this podcast as well. And his findings under the terms of Creative Commons Attribution license, and that permits me unrestricted use, providing I give him credit. So I will be giving him credit. If those people who want to read that research in its entirety, there's a link down below in the description, so you can go and have a read of it at your leisure. So I think it was March of this year, he did this, and he's uncovered some amazing stuff, and it makes for excellent reading. And that his research paper can go into way more depth than I can, guys. So hats off to him, because he's done an absolutely cracking job uncovering the truth regarding some of these legends. So research is key, eh, Barbara?
Absolutely.
When you're investigating the paranormal, research is key. So if you find something about something, don't just stop there. Keep researching it and keep reading it. Don't just take one nugget of individual information as the truth. Corroboration is required if you're going to do a good job. And by God, this man has done a cracking job. So Pluckley, as I said, a little rural village in Kent. It started life as an Anglo-Saxon settlement. It boasts several historic buildings, along with St. Nicholas Church, which is a 14th century church. And I already said it's where the Darling Buds of May was filming took place in the 90s. It is a gorgeous, sleepy little village. Well, it was when I frequented it. Apart from Halloween, of course, it's certainly not then. But these are the chappies, or some of the chappies that built it. The Deering family were landed gentry. They owned most of Pluckley and its surrounding land from about the 16th century onwards. So as an affluent family, several places are named after them, like Deering Wood and the Deering Arms, and we'll talk about both of those places shortly. It owes its fame to being referred to as the most haunted village in England, although it is strongly contested, as I've previously said. And this fame was brought about by a book that was written in wasn't a book actually, it was what they used to call gazettes in 1950, and it gained widespread knowledge in the 70s via books such as Peter Underwood's Gazette of British Ghosts, which was published in 1971. Everyone, if they're into the paranormal, has probably heard of Peter Underwood. I've got a few of his books on my shelf. Andrew Green's Our Haunted Kingdom and Hippisley Cox's Haunted Britain, which were both published in 1973. Deering Woods, is that also known as Screaming Woods? Yes, it is. Dering. Deering, as in the name of the old chap up there. Mark Alexander's Phantom Britain was published in 1975, and he also mentions a lot of the ghosts. And as I've previously stated, it was also mentioned in the Guinness Book of Records. Now, in 1971, a News of the World journalist, William Rankin, visited Pluckley whilst reviewing Peter Underwood's book, and he found he could not discover anybody there at all that had experienced or witnessed any of Pluckley's ghosts in the last 25 years. So that's prior to 1950. So most of the ghosts, or a great deal of the ghosts, we know about because of Frederick Sanders. So he lived in Pluckley, and he was born in 1908 and died in 1996. He lived in Pluckley, and he was an avid ghost hunter and a psychical researcher and historian. He held 14 ghost hunts in the area between February of 1939 and December of 1940. And his first publication was in 1946 called Psychical Research, Haunted Kent. His sources for the stories that he brings up in the book were his grandfather, his teacher, or local elders of the village. So these stories are either based on local tragic events or from memories of Sanders himself or Sanders' sources. A few of these stories, however, can be attributed to the 1950s and a man called Desmond Carrington. Now, Barbara, you did some research on him, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Desmond Carrington admits that he fabricated a few of the stories for an article that was in the 1962 TV Times Extra magazine, and it was actually a Christmas edition, so it had to be some fresh and new spectrals sort of conjured up for that particular edition. He says he made up the story of the phantom horse and the coach, the monk of Greystones, and the poltergeist at Surrender Deering, which
Surrender Deering.
Okay. I wrote it down as surrender. Okay. So yeah, he admits that he did actually write. He made those up, and there is no reason to disbelieve him, not believe him. So we do know that at least some of the stories around Pluckley are not true. What Tracy and I were talking about earlier is that some of these particular phantoms, in particular the horse and coach, have since been seen by a number of people. I've heard several stories about people who have seen this horse and coach. So it's really interesting to note that these fictitious phantoms have actually been seen by a number of people.
All the people have just had too many ales in the local pub, one or t'other.
Yeah. The power of suggestion.
Power of suggestion, yeah. Desmond was getting interviewed at the time, Barb?
Sorry?
Desmond was getting interviewed.
Yeah.
Desmond Carrington was getting interviewed at the time. So he was actually in a TV show. I can't remember what it was called, and I didn't put it in my notes. But he was an actor and later on became a radio DJ, and he was living in Pluckley. And a journalist came to interview him there, and he was trying to find an angle on the village. So he asked Desmond, had he heard of a ghost story? And Desmond responded that, yes, I've heard of one. And in Desmond's own words, we ended up concocting a whole string of them just for the article. So we've got it from Desmond's own voice that, yes, they were created. Now, as we go through, and we're going to look at every single legend, and we're going to look at every single tale, and we're going to try and get to the truth. We're going to show you where it's actually come from, where this legend is supposedly come from. So we're going to basically endeavor to advise which stories belong to which camp, while we heavily lean on Simon Morton's research, whilst we traverse our way along the narrow, winding lanes of Pluckley's haunted heritage.
It is a very beautiful place to traverse the winding the winding lanes. So,
it is.
Just something that I did. I noted that in the Darling Buds of May, you may have noticed there are a lot of buildings with arched windows. And the reason there are so many arched windows in the village is that one of the many Lord Derrings during the Civil War, he had to escape a battle by jumping through a window, and the window he jumped through was an arched window, and so as a result he survived, and many of the buildings that he built in the area after that had the arched windows, and of course the village people have copied that trend, and so a lot of the buildings in that village now have the lovely arched windows.
That's right. So what you're looking at here in this picture is you're looking at Pinnock Bridge. Okay, now it might not look like a bridge, but you can see the side rampart there, just there, of the actual bridge. It is a bridge. And this is our first haunted spot that we discuss. And the legend of the watercress woman of Pinnock Bridge. So according to Sanders, the source for this tale was his grandmother. The watercress woman was a well-known eccentric gypsy woman and a local character who used to gather and sell watercress to the surrounding villages for a living. Each night at dusk, she used to sit on the walls of Pinnock Bridge, taking respite from her day of gathering all the watercress and trying to sell it, smoking her clay pipe while drinking gin from her flask. One night, it was said that she fell asleep and her pipe dropped onto her clothing, setting her alight. Because of where she was, no one heard her agonizing screams. It is said that her charred body was found the next day with her battered flask lying nearby. So her ghost is reported as manifesting on the anniversary of her death on the Pinnock Bridge. And she's seen as a figure surrounded by flames screaming for help. Over the decades, this is said to now have been dimmed to nothing more than a faint pink glow of a figure that appears near the spot where the lady burnt to death. So Dr. Simon Morton, enter. He's conducted research into this particular one, well, all of them actually, but this particular one, he's actually found the story is based on fact. So Sarah Sharp was burnt to death in 1911, and it is corroborated by her birth certificate. Now, the locals said this particular lady was remembered as the watercress lady because she used to gather and sell watercress. Incidentally, Simon's also discovered that she's actually a distant relative of his. So how's that for discovering something when you're doing some ghosty research?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been confirmed by her death certificate. That particular woman had her place of death, had how she died, and also the fact that she was known locally as the watercress lady. So that one appears true.
Tick.
Tick. This next one, I've been here many a time in the dead of the night. This is Fright Corner. So this is at the Pinnock Crossroads. Again, first mentioned by Sanders, but he doesn't cite a source for this story. So the story goes that an old oak tree once stood on the spot. I highly doubt it exists today. And it goes that a highwayman was pursued across the fields until he reached the oak tree where he made his last stand. It had a bit of a hollow in it. So he kind of literally hid in the hollow of the tree after a tree. He got found and was fighting with his swords, but he was overpowered and run through by several swords. Another story relates to the fact that this is where he used to actually hide and ambush his victims. And that's where he was trying to get back to, because he knew if he could get into that hole in the tree, that alcove in the tree, that they would probably run past him. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. So apparently, in the early hours on winter evenings, witnesses have said to have seen a body pinned to a phantom tree and slumped forward with a large sword handle protruding from his chest. So why it's called Fright Corner is actually unknown. Don't know whether it's because the highwayman was cornered there and he was frightened, or whether people were getting frightened there. The actual name has been lost to time, basically. No one really knows why it's called Fright Corner.
I suspect, Tracy, that it's because this particular corner I've seen listed as being the location, the general location of where a number of apparitions have been seen. It was Fright Corner where a husband and wife were driving through the middle of the night. They'd been to the next village and were driving home again, and they saw the apparition of a horses and a coach. Apparently it was quite a bright apparition, and I've heard I can't tell you off the top of my head what the other ones are for this particular area, because I didn't realize Tracy was going to put this photo up. But I know I've seen it listed as being the location of several different apparitions or activities that have been noted. And by different people as well.
So our next one. This is, you're going to get a story here, guys. This is something else, this place. Absolutely something else. This is Screaming Wood. So there is a huge wood, and it's called Daring Wood, but it kind of breaks up into other places as well. Now, some of the woods, like I think it's Parkwood, has been completely stripped, and there's now houses there. But Daring Wood is actually quite large, and it connects villages. So it runs from Pluckley right down to Smarden, which is about 3 miles away. And at various points, you can enter the wood, and there's loads of bridle paths and there's loads of walkways, and it's actually a lovely place to be. I mean, it's got some of the rarest butterflies, I think, that you can find in there. There's loads of wildlife in there. It's just a lovely place to go for a walk if you don't go off the beaten path. So, oh, there we go. It's in my notes. So Daring Wood is 310 acres. This is ancient woodland, guys. This isn't just a wood that's been going for a couple of 100 years. We're talking about a couple of centuries, at least probably 4 centuries, if not longer. And there's ancient oaks. So there's some beautiful trees in there. So it's about 3 kilometers from Pluckley, and it backs onto Smarden, or there's a Smarden end of it, which is another village. I think there's about 5 villages around the area. And it straddles the kind of boundaries of both Pluckley and Smarden, and also Edgerton, my old village. It's got loads of nightingales in it. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And there's relics that you can find in there from medieval times right through to the Victorian age as well. So the part that is actually referred to as Screaming Woods is in between Pluckley and Smarden. And if you're actually heading that way, you've got to go to the Smarden Bell if it's still open, because that is the most gorgeous pub I've ever been in my absolute life. So there's lots of pubs in England. Unfortunately, lots of them closing as well. But the thing to do on a Sunday was to go around all these villages and just basically do a pub crawl, and have one beer in each one, and then stop at the next one and have another beer and then move on to the next one. So what is the stories behind Screaming Woods? Right. So witnesses apparently have been scared senseless by a sudden, loud and terrifying screaming coming from deep within the woods. And before anyone says, oh, it's wildlife, let it be known that some of these people who have witnessed this are country folk or hunting folk, and they are more than familiar with the sounds of wildlife around where they live. So that is not going to fly as an excuse, or as a, what's the word I'm looking for? As a, oh my God, it's gone. Excuse? I don't know, whatever, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I've spent time in these woods, both in the daylight and at dusk. And I can completely attest to the fact that they are absolutely beautiful to a point. And then it changes. So I'm going to relate a bit of a story to you that happened to me. So was late one afternoon. I was I didn't know it was Screaming Woods, okay? I just knew it as Daring Wood at that point. I knew Screaming Wood was in there somewhere, but I didn't know where it was. But apparently, I was in it. But I spent the afternoon collecting wood from the forest floor to use as kindling in my fireplace. So as I walked into the wood and I went way off the path, I walked into the dense wood. There was no pathways and there was no bridle ways. I noticed all of a sudden it was really dark, and I just assumed that it was dark because of the density of the forest and how dense it had now become. Then I became acutely aware of how silent, like really unnaturally silent the wood was, and how eerie it felt. The thing was that only seconds before I had been wandering along, listening to the bird song, with a big smile on my face as I was bending down and picking up my wood and putting it in my sack. And I wasn't hearing any of that anymore. There was no birds. There was nothing. And I felt watched. I felt totally, totally watched and really unwelcome. I was looking over my shoulder all the time. The bird song had completely ceased. There was nothing. And as I say, that hadn't been the case just minutes earlier. I was hearing lots of birds chattering. There was nothing, absolutely nothing. I stopped in my tracks and I listened, and I couldn't even say it was crickets. So I was in amongst something like the picture I'm showing you now, right in amongst it. There was no pathways at all. I went way off the path. There was no bird song. There was no woodland animal songs that I could hear. No rustling, there was no breeze, there was absolutely nothing except this really pressure, like this huge pressure in my ears, like my ears needed to pop, and there was an absolute resounding silence. It was almost like I was in a bubble almost. And then came this, I'll never forget this as long as I live, and then came this overwhelming sense of dread. Just I can't describe it anything other than dread. It was awful. I've never experienced anything like it in my life. It was like a foreboding dread. I can't describe it any other way. I was absolutely too terrified to move at that point, and I'll be quite honest with you, I was stood rooted to the spot. And I had this incredible sensation that someone was watching me, and they were, I actually was thinking human at this point, and it was someone that was like going to pounce. I don't know how long I stayed like that, but I've never felt terror, and it just came over me all of a sudden. I never felt terror like that before. And then something must have broke, because then I just ran. I had this bloody great big sack of wood slung over my shoulder, and I bolted, man, absolutely bolted. I just took off at high speed. I didn't even know where the car was at this point because I was so deep in the forest. I just ran, and I didn't stop until I saw my red little car peeking out from between the trees. I ran out there. I chucked me wood in the boot. I put my foot to the metal, and off I hightailed it out of there, man. I had no idea when I was running where I was going. I was so terrified. But I tell you what, I went home and I had a couple of straight whiskies. And then I had a couple more. I was that freaked out. That wood is one of the scariest things I have ever come across. I never heard any screaming. I never heard anything. And that was probably the most frightening thing of all, because only minutes earlier, I was listening to beautiful bird song. So there has been a couple of, and you'll find this all over the internet, couple of reports regarding these woods. There's one about 20 murders occurring in the woods. And then there's another one about 4 teenagers going missing in the woods. Both of these stories are hoaxes. They never, ever happened. So this is probably a really good reminder to people not to believe everything you read on the internet, even when it's got newspaper clippings showing you this stuff. Because, yeah, categorically, never, ever happened. People have researched it and looked into it. Never happened. So the next place, I did find a photo of it, but I was categorically not allowed to use it. So I didn't use it. So we've got no slide for this next one. And this story is about the hanging schoolmaster. Now, this occurred in Dickie Buss's Lane. And it's called Dickie Buss's Lane because Dickie Buss was a guy who owned one of the farms around there. So this particular story is an interesting one. It goes that in 1920, a group of school children on their way home from school found the body of their teacher hanging from a tree. And it said on certain nights, when the moon is full, his spectral form is said to be clearly seen swinging from the branch upon which he hung himself. Excuse me. Again, this story originally comes from Sanders, who reported this in the 1950s. He said this happened in 1919, and his source for the story was Henry Turf, who was his schoolmaster. And his schoolmaster, Henry, actually knew the guy in question, and the guy in question used to walk the 3 miles from Smarden to drink and have a chat with him in the local Black Horse. So Professor Simon Morton has actually discovered there was another suicide which was reported, but the individual was actually a local paper maker by the name of Henry Martin. Now, his death certificate confirms that he took his life in that manner by hanging himself on a tree in Dickie Buss's Lane in 1919. So in 1923, it was reported in the newspaper that a Smarden schoolmaster did commit suicide, but he didn't hang himself. He drowned himself in a pond. So it appears that these two stories have merged over time, or they were possibly incorrectly reported by Sanders himself in the first instance. Then we were having this conversation as well, weren't we, Barbara, about stories being all confuddled and getting mixed up and merging with other stories. And
it's easy enough to do over time as people recount it, and then that's recounted again, and someone leaves out, an important piece like, that they drowned and weren't hung. And it's over time, stories can completely evolve into something that's very different than what actually happened.
And the fact of the matter is, we're talking about a small village that had 2 suicides in the space of 4 years. So it could be understandable why some people are getting the nuances of the story mixed up.
Yeah.
Okay. The next slide, the phantom coach and horses. So this is seen all through Pluckley, apparently, or should I say, some witnesses have reported seeing it. It's not in a particular place. Apparently, it's all through everywhere. So apparently, in the early hours of the morning, a phantom coach and horses is said to be heard racing by. Not many people see it, most people hear it. However, it has created absolute panic in those that have heard it. Because, I mean, there must be nothing more frightening than hearing something right next to you or going by you and seeing absolutely nothing. However, this particular story is the story, one of the stories that Carrington himself admitted is a complete fabrication by him and the journalist Bill Evans, who was interviewing him at the time. Okay. So that's a Now, the next photo is of greystones on the Betherston Road. So Betherston,
Lovely place.
yeah, it is a lovely place. Betherston is a another village. It's actually quite a large village. And the tale goes that a monk lived in this house at one time, and he had a friendly relationship with the lady who lived nearby at Rose Court. We'll talk about Rose Court in a minute. They can be seen walking together, her with her dogs at her heels. This story's been researched, and unfortunately, it's the same as the previous one. Deliberately fabricated by Desmond Carrington and Bill Evans. And again, Desmond Carrington openly admits fabricating the ghost story of this location. Now, this one was really difficult to find a photo of. This is the brickworks. So we're going to just talk about the screaming man of the clay pit. So documented events actually confirm this story. And this is one of Sanders' stories that was first mentioned in his 1950 book. Richard Bridgeland was 35 years old, and he worked at the Pluckley Brickworks, or Brick and Tile Works, which is located at the southern end of the village itself. In 1899, on January the 1st, he was digging clay from the pit with two other workers when a portion of the wall fell down on him. He was quickly dug out, but he was found to have a broken neck, and he died in that accident, obviously. So he is remembered as the screaming man of the old clay pit, and the reason being is because allegedly his ghost is said to scream the way that it did when the wall fell on him. So that one is documented. So that story is not a made-up one. Next slide. This is a cute little place. This is Rose Court on Station Road. And the story is about who they call the Lady of Rose Court. So this is an apparition of a woman who is said to haunt this large house at the north of the old brick and tile factory. And this one was first reported by Sanders again in 1950. So she either presents herself in auditory form of her calling her dogs, or she's seen in the gardens around mid-afternoon. Now, that was allegedly the time that she died. This has been reported to being attributed to the Tudor times, and the story goes that she was the mistress of one of the Deering family who took her own life with poison. Now we get to the point where we get another story mixed up with another story. So Simon Morton, again, Professor Simon Morton has researched this story, and he's discovered that, in fact, there was actually a suicide at this house, according to an inquest that was held there. On August the 8th in 1862, Mary Ann Bennett took her own life by taking an overdose of opium at age 31. Her father was staying with her at the time, and she did have a husband. She'd not been of sound mind for a couple of years, apparently, and she died around 2:30 p.m., according to her father, and that is what is corroborated on her death certificate. She is actually remembered as the lady and was called the Lady of Rose Court. So that's why the apparition of her is called the Lady of Rose Court. So we've got a couple of things seeping in here. I don't know if you have linked to the previous story, which we now know is a fabrication about the monk who used to walk with the Lady of Rose Court, who had her dogs at her heels. And now we've got the Lady at Rose Court, who is apparently heard calling her dogs or seeing a visual of hers in the gardens around mid-afternoon, which is confirmed the time of her death on her death certificate. So I'd probably say it could be a true story. I mean, we know it's a true story. The suicide happened, but it could be true that her ghost wanders around there perhaps. But there's no monk involved. No monk, people. So the next one, my favourite place to hang out, St. Nicholas Church. I caught 2 people having SEX on a gravestone when I was policing this on Halloween night.
Oh, what?
We deliberately hid behind another gravestone, jumped up and went, "What are you doing?" And they just levitated. You should have seen them. It was so funny. We were wetting our pants. We had so much fun that night. As much as we had to deal with drunken bums, we still had a lot of fun ourselves. So St. Nicholas Church, quite a few hauntings there, allegedly, but the big one is the Red Lady of St. Nicholas Church. So the Red Lady of St. Nicholas Church was said to be a Deering lady, or Lady Deering, one of the Lady Deerings. She was apparently an exceptionally beautiful woman who died and was buried by her grieving husband. And before encasing her in a coffin made of 7 layers of lead and interring her in the family vault at St. Nicholas Church, she placed a red rose on her chest. So it has been reported that she has been seen wandering around the graveyard. Now, this story was first reported by Sanders, and he cites his source, which was his grandfather. Incidentally, when he was doing one of his ghost hunts, Sanders said that he heard a disembodied lady's voice in the graveyard. So he reckons that in 1959, a group of ghost hunters laid her to rest. There hasn't been any new sightings of her that I am aware or I have heard of, although the graveyard does get a bit spooky at night, to be honest. And there's just another shot there. And there's an inside shot.
Oh, it's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's lovely. And then, I thought I'd had another one in there. Oh, obviously not. I beg your pardon, people. So sorry. So, Surrenden Deering. This is Surrenden Deering.
Ah, right.
Yeah. So, the White Lady of Surrenden Deering. So, according to Sanders, the White Lady is said to haunt Surrenden Deering, which was the seat of the Deering family. Unfortunately, this completely burnt to the ground in 1952. But in the early 1900s, it was leased to an American millionaire who was an Olympic champion shooter and a big game hunter called Walter Winans. Now, apparently one night, Walter stayed up to try and lay the ghost to rest, who actually indeed appeared to him. So he shot at her as she went through the wall, disappeared through the wall. While Sanders doesn't report a source for his story, for this one at any rate, this account is further corroborated by a chap called Mark Tiffin, who in 1959 wrote a letter to the Kentish Express. He stated that his mum worked here at the time of Winans' experience with the White Lady, and she told him of several incidents where visitors had packed their bags in the dead of the night and done a runner. Allegedly, one night, one of the Lady Deerings had gone up to the nursery to say goodnight to the children when she slipped and she crashed to her death at the bottom of the nursery stairs. The Lady Deering that this tale belongs to is not mentioned, and I haven't been able to find it, and neither has Simon Morton, but there's been quite a few Lady Deerings.
It would have been, yeah.
So this next slide, and this is not where it is, because where it is, no one knows. It's in Deering Wood at the Smarden end. And it's not exactly a ghost story, but it's a folklore tale. So it's about Satan himself. So Sanders relates a local legend about the remains of what is a tree or a shrub, no one's quite sure, that was located at the eastern edge of Deering Wood near Smarden. Now, the story goes, and I've tried to find this because I was drunk one night and I was going to do it, that you had to dance around the bush and then that would bring forth the devil himself. So according to Simon Morton, a local resident confirms this legend as having predates Sanders. So that's earlier than 1950s. And his parents used to tell him the story when he was a child. So the story goes, if you go round the stump backwards 3 times, the devil would appear. Dennis Chambers, in the book that I've got, Haunted Pluckley, the most haunted village in Kent, goes a little further with it. He states this had to be done at midnight and you had to be naked. So I don't know where the bush is, but we went out on a hunt one night trying to find it when we were all 3 sheets to the wind. Never found it, but yep, we were ready to go. And the story I heard was, or the story we got told was, yes, you had to dance around it naked. So this is the Black Horse Inn in Pluckley Village Centre, like in the centre. So it is the home to apparently 2 or 3 ghosts, but it is the home to a poltergeist. So this is a grade 2 listed building and it stands right next door to the church. So between, and I think I can show you there. So this is the side door that I was talking about earlier. You come out the side door, you walk across here, and no, there's nothing there. Sorry, guys. Beg your pardon. And just further out, you'll find a little, I don't know what you call them. It's like a little gatehouse you walk through, and it's got a gate on it. And then you're in the grounds of the graveyard. You're in the graveyard of the church. So it's right next door. It's over to the right here. So this place is a cracking little place. It's a cracking pub, ma'am. Grade 2 listed building. It's said that the building actually began life as a farmhouse surrounded by a small moat. Then it was used as the Deering family's bailiff house. And that's where the estate was managed from. So a bailiff in those days was a person that went around all the people who rented properties off the Deering family and collected the rents from the tenants. Normally not a person to be messed with at all in any way, shape or form. It's only been a pub for about the last 200 or 300 years. So in 1973, Peter Underwood reported this location in the Kentish Express. And the landlady at the time then was called Peggy Whiting. She described items that would go missing only later to reappear somewhere else, and a vase that was described as flying across the bar. The article ties the haunting to the murder of a woman by a bowling pin more than 100 years earlier. In the same month, Sanders wrote to the paper to advise that the murdered woman was Jean Spicer, who died in 1772. But in fact, Simon Morton has discovered that the victim was Jessie Spicer, who was a man, and they were playing for, 2 guys were playing for a wager. And what happened was a pin hit a bystander violently in the head. So apparently he was taken home and he died later that evening at home. So in Dennis Chambers' Haunted Pluckley book that he wrote in 1984, he describes the experiences by the then landlords, Ted and Jean Kingston Miles. Those were the landlords after Peggy, I think. Now, they've suffered items of property, mainly clothing, that keeps going missing for long periods of time, only to turn up again.
I hope they weren't wearing it at the time.
No, I was just going to say, like, oh, I'm
Sorry,
assuming you mean dirty washing or clean washing or whatever.
Oh, that's okay then. I'm sure I put pants on this morning. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sure I put pants on. I'm just going shopping, and now I look down and I don't got none.
Exactly.
So this clothing apparently would go missing for long periods of time and then turn up in a location where there's no way they could miss it. And customers actually had their own property go missing as well as staff did. I've also been told these stories by those that worked there in the early 1990s. They've had personal experiences. In 2008, owner Kevin Savage reports glasses being thrown off the bar, an apparition of a little girl being seen and heard in front of the fireplace, the old bailiff being witnessed sitting in the corner, accompanied by 2 dogs just watching everybody. So again, we're tying back to the bailiff story, which we know from fact that this was the bailiff house and where the estate, the Deering estate, was ran from. A patron describes an incident of the owner putting his cigarette in a bar ashtray only to have it fly 2 to 3 feet across the room. And another patron describes a little girl laughing by the fireplace when there was absolutely no children present there at all. So Ghost Hunters International have investigated the Black Horse. I've put the link down in the description. It's actually an interesting investigation. Go check it out. I think they investigate 3 places. They investigate the Black Horse. They investigate Elvie Farm, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And they also investigate Screaming Woods. Okay, next one. That's the side view of the pub. This is the inside of part of the pub. And this is from the other angle, looking down. So as you can see, it's quite an old pub. Right, the next one we've got here is good old Deering Arms, which is situated on the Grove. So this place was originally built for the Deering family in the 1840s, and it was used as an old hunting lodge. It's now run as a bed and breakfast and a restaurant and a bar, I believe. And while it's not normally mentioned in the long line of Pluckley's ghosts, it appears to have its own resident spirit. When I lived there, the Deering Arms was shut down. It wasn't open. The only place that was open in Pluckley as a bar was the Black Horse Inn. So according to the licensee in 1984, the spectre of an old lady is seen sitting at a table by the window watching the world go by. She's so solid that apparently if it wasn't for her old-fashioned clothing that she wears, people would actually have assumed her to be a patron. The minute that someone comments on her and her clothing, she disappears. She's up, poof, gone.
Am I the only one? Am I the only one peering intently at all these windows now to see if I can see her?
Oh, I can see something there. See something there.
Yeah.
Look at that, it's a ghost. I have actually heard of this story, but it got told to me of being tied up with Rose Court. And it was a woman that sat in the window at Rose Court. That's how it was told to me originally. And then when I mentioned it to some other people I knew that lived in Parkley, they went, no, that's Surrendon Deering. That's Surrendon Deering. That burnt down. And now we've come to the conclusion, and I was told by somebody else that, no, that's the Deering Arms and you can't go in there because it's closed. But I did go and stand outside the window, but I never saw out. So now we come to Elvie Farm in Elvie Lane. So this was turned into a B&B in 2007. So you can go stay here. It's actually really quite nice. It offers accommodation, and the oldest part of the building dates to 1406. So the first mention of this location being haunted comes from a 1973 book called Our Haunted Kingdom. I think I mentioned it earlier, by Andrew Green. So Alan Ambrose, who was the resident licensee, had told Andrew that objects moved of their own and that his wife had seen the apparition of a Victorian man just lying on one of their beds. So 2 of the property's later owners have described their paranormal experiences as being linked to the suicide of a farmer that was a previous tenant there, called Edward Brett. So on the 10th of January 1900, he shot himself. And his death certificate states that he was only 29 at the time. So things must have been really bad. But that is the only mention. Again, sorry, that's it. That's the only mention of any hauntings there at Alvey Farm. There are lots of other places mentioned, but because they're vague mentions or they have not able to be traced to anything, there's I'll mention them anyway. So there's other spectres that haunt the village, that and surrounding areas, such as the Colonel. So he was apparently supposed to have hung himself in Park Wood. That no longer exists. That's been torn down, and now there's a whole suburb built on it, I believe. So he could be seen briskly walking through the wood before disappearing in front of people's eyes. There's a haunted mill, again, no longer existing. And the Checkers pub in nearby Smarden is apparently haunted by a Napoleonic soldier who was killed during a fight, but there's no details on that. And even scarcer are the sources linking the story. So I've left them out of here, just make a mention of them. But yeah, go and check out Ghost Hunters International investigation. They did the Black Horse, Alvey Farm, and Screaming Woods back in 2008. I've linked the YouTube episode below, and I've also linked Professor Simon Morton's research paper below for those who would like to go through and read it in its entirety.
It's really interesting.
It is, yeah. So that's pretty much all I've got for you on Pluckley. I thought it would have taken longer, but there you go. It was only about an hour.
It was
so
really
anyone,
good.
yeah,
really enjoyed it.
Very interesting little place. And I mean, it's probably a lot bigger now than what it was when I was there back in the early 90s.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I used to like going to Pluckley because I was always trying to find a ghost or 6 there.
Well, it's going on my list. It's going on my list of somewhere to go.
Go and visit. Go and have a pint in the Black Horse Inn for me, Barb.
I'll mention your name, Tracy.
They'll probably go.
Get checked out.
yeah, I was just going to say they'll probably go, oh, that larrikin. No, I was always on my best behaviour. Apart from going, is there a ghost here? Yeah. That's me. Every place I walked into, is there a ghost here? It's sick to bloody death of me. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell for Pluckley.
Any questions, folks? Any questions, comments? What did you think? Isn't it an awesome place? I think it's an amazing place.
I'm just going to pull up what we're doing next week because I didn't know. Oh,
doppelgangers.
We're going to talk about doppelgangers next week, guys.
Kelly Sorden. We've seen one, eh?
Have you?
Yeah, we did. And a church.
So that's not going to be alive. We're just going to do a video on that one. And then the week after, we have got Kat Ward from Canada, paranormal investigator from Canada that will be interviewing her. And then lastly for June, we've got another, we'll do this one as a live this time, on time slips. So that should be an interesting one.
Should be, definitely.
So, thanks, Cal. I'm just like, I hope you did. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I was just going to write up what I remembered from my head and the stories that I'd been told, and then I decided to see if I could search anything down, and then opened up a can of whoop-ass with Professor Simon Morton's research.
And that happens so often with anything paranormal, guys. It's like I did the same thing. I thought, oh, Pluckley, it sounds wonderful, most haunted village and rah, rah, rah. So I thought I'll do a little bit of research myself so I can help Tracy, with sounding like I know a little bit about it. And it's like, holy shit, these papers and this DJ who reckons he made stories up, and this guy, other guy who's basically the self-appointed historian for the village. And yeah, there's quite a backstory to it, and it's really interesting. Absolutely, but it always goes to show about just doing that little bit of extra research will add the extra layers to the history of a place. And
it was so cool to be able to track back the sources of the stories and see where they had come from, Yeah. And if they were corroborated by anything else, and a lot of them are, and which ones were just total fabrications, which we know there's definitely 3.
Yeah.
So it was very, very interesting.
And it doesn't mean because some of the stories haven't been corroborated, it doesn't mean they're not true. It just means that they haven't been proven.
Thanks, Stephen.
Something may come to light, to either prove or disprove them. But it's always well worth just doing that extra bit of research and looking into things properly.
And you know what the thing is, guys, what you got to think of is if you don't do the research now on some things, or if somebody doesn't do the research now on some of these stories, the information's going to be lost. The potential corroborating information that you would be able to dig up could be completely lost if you leave it. Like, for instance, if it had been left another 200 years before Simon Morton did his research on it, would you still be able to dig up all that information to corroborate things, death certificates, messages and newspaper clippings, that sort of thing? This could all be gone. So the important thing is to do your research and do it really, really thoroughly.
And also for the paranormal investigators out there, or even enthusiasts, it's really important to write and to note things down, and to write a report, or even either in writing or a video report, or online, so that there is something to leave about, that other investigators and historians and just people who are interested have that information, and cite your sources and cite where you got the information from, because it all adds to the big picture. It could be in another 50 years' time someone looks at a paranormal investigator's report and puts 4 and 4 together and completely proves that that something paranormal happened. It just, whether it's history, whether it's your findings, just always write a report, even if it's just an informal one. Just note it down.
Actually, Barbara, that reminds me, I want to drag you into a little bit of a research thing on a particular location.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I've done a bit of a deep dive on it, but I think 2 heads are better than 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm not out there to dismiss the claims. I'm out there to find if there's any corroboration for those claims. I want to find proof.
Yeah. Well,
that these supposed things occurred.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not proof that there's a ghost.
I was going to say,
but proof that the reason why there's a ghost, or the incident that created the ghost, actually did occur.
Yeah. Oh, so, no. Happy to help.
Long-term project, that one, to be something that we just chip away at for God knows how long until we find something, I guess.
Yeah. And sometimes that's how it happens, isn't it? It's just it's like a jigsaw, piece by piece by piece.
So while we've got you guys, where would you like us to shine our spotlight on, haunted location wise? Any location that you can think of. Doesn't necessarily have to be in New Zealand. New Zealand would be cool, but it doesn't have to be in New Zealand. It can be overseas. But is there anywhere that you would like us to feature on the program in our haunted location spotlight section? I don't see anything. People are frantically thinking, or everyone's
Have
gone
a
to
think
sleep.
about it anyway.
Have a think about it. The other thing I was thinking too, and I've still got to discuss this with Barb and Tash, but I thought that we might start showcasing some case files of some. Oh, Stephen. Okay. That's a great idea. Yeah, that's a really cool idea, actually. Boleskine House. Yeah, that, or Boleskine, or however you say it, that could actually be worth it.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of stuff around on it. So that would, yeah. And I've got some people in the know that are over there, not far from it. So it's actually being rebuilt. It's looking really good at the moment. But yes, interesting place, that place. Owned by Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin, owned by, or rented, should I say, by Alistair Crowley from the Ordo Templi Orientis, should I say? I've been to Boleskine House. Have you? Yes, old Crowley. Yep. Know him very well. Know his teachings very well. Okay, so I guess that's about it, really, isn't it?
I think it is.
So I think that thus endeth the live for this evening. Unless there's anything you guys want to chat about. I'm pretty much chatted out after that, to be quite honest. I'm chatted out.
Well, have a really good weekend, folks. It looks like it's going to be cold, so stay warm. I know I'm going to watch a few paranormal programs. Might just binge watch Most Haunted or something like that.
Oh, are you? Speaking of Most Haunted, I only ever used to watch that because I used to love watching the locations that they went to, right?
Yes, yeah.
And that was the only reason I watched it. It wasn't for the ghost hunt at all, or the investigation. I won't call it that because it wasn't an investigation. But I have just seen a video. I've seen 2 videos that have come out, and they're only very short snippets. And I don't know if you remember the Mary Loves Dick episode where Derek Akora went into trance and he goes, Mary loves Dick. Mary loves Dick. There's actually a video that's come out that has got him and Yvette on camera. And he jokingly says that to her, and she goes, I dare you to say that in the program. I dare you. Go on, Derek. I dare you to say Mary loves Dick, instead of Mary loves Richard. So he did. And you can see Yvette on the video when he's going, Mary loves Dick. Mary loves Dick. She goes, and puts her hand across her mouth because she's starting to smile. And there's another video that's just come out as well. Where she's doing an interview with a TV host, and the cameras are rolling, but they're not on air yet.
Yeah.
And he says something about something or other, and she turns around and goes, yeah, well, of course Derek would do that because he was a lying bastard. Oh, he was a lying bastard, wasn't he? And I thought, oh dear, okay. So those 2 have just, I've seen.
No love lost there. Absolutely no love lost there, right?
No, none. But she knew that he was going to come out and say, Mary loves Dick, Mary loves Dick. So he wasn't actually in a trance when he said that at all.
Well, he might have been watching porn.
It sounds like 1600s porn to me.
Yeah.
But anyway, guys, thanks for joining the live. Really appreciate you guys joining the live. Listen, it's hard to get anything out on YouTube now and get it seen. So we really appreciate you liking it, commenting in the YouTube.
Sharing it.
subscribing to the channel, and also watching it from start to finish, because the algorithms actually pick up on people who watch 20 minutes or 40 minutes of it and exit out before it's finished. And then what that tells that algorithm is that person didn't enjoy it. So even if you bugger off and do the washing or something, just let it run. If you can't be bothered listening to it anymore, we'd really appreciate that.
I mean, you don't actually need to see us. You can just literally
listen.
play it. Just and listen to it while you're doing whatever. I mean, well, Tracy's photos were lovely, but apart from that, you really don't have to. A lot of them, you don't have to listen to it.
Listen,
You don't
those
have to
photos.
just listen. Oh, look, I'll just shut up because
those photos, and I'll be straight up front about this, they're not my photos. They're taken off the internet, used with creative licensing. Reason being is we didn't have mobile phones back in the 1990s, people. We had bricks.
Yeah.
We had, my mobile phone was the size of a brick, and the aerial was about the length of another brick on top of it. And it didn't go down. No one had walked around with cameras back then. So I never took shots. I did actually, there are some photos of me in stocks at the Darling Buds and May picnic in my police uniform, and the public are being charged 50p.
Oh, you could have put that in.
50p to throw a wet sponge at the copper. But that's pretty much all, and a couple of photos of me walking away laughing. But that's pretty much all I got photos of in Pluckley Village, and that was just someone else.
I thought the photos were lovely. It really did showcase Pluckley Village, and thank you, Tracy. I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to go and visit it now. It was great. I really, really enjoyed your presentation.
You're welcome. Get photos.
Yeah,
if you do. All right, guys. So I guess that's it for this week, and we'll see you next Friday at 8 o'clock, and it will just be a video. It won't be a live, for our discussion on doppelgangers.
That'll be a good one. That will be a good one.
Be interesting. So I'll be bringing you some history on doppelgangers with regards to very famous people who have seen their own doppelganger.
Wow. Yeah.
And we'll also be discussing the difference between doppelgangers and crisis apparitions and bilocations and things like that, so that people don't get those confused, because there is very subtle nuances between them all.
Okay, so have a great weekend. Have an even better week next week, and we will catch you all then, I hope.
Yep, Friday 8 o'clock. See you then.
Okay. Stay warm, folks. That's a wave. I don't know. It's not picking it up. Okay.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.